Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster 2, episode 11 now. My name is Lucius, or Luck, whichever one works, whichever one is fine. And today I thought, instead of a time lapse, I'd kind of walk you through how I create some of these buildings. So I mean, yeah, let's just get into the supercut and see what I can come up with. Right now what's holding me back from moving on in this area is figuring out what goes on back here. So I was thinking of placing the flying theater. Actually, I've got a version of it here with the path reduced, so there's no path except that little sliver at the front, you see. And generally it's not the best idea to put a ride right in the front, especially one that gets as popular as this one. But I think we can make it work if we have the entrance through here instead of through here, which is likely to be the exit. I know people will do like custom videos and custom sounds, custom motion sequences, right? I don't care that much. The fact that this is here is already good enough for me. And the fact that you can customize it, that's great for those who want to do that. The Cosmos one works because this is all space themed anyway. I think something like that is pretty good. And that means we can finish up this facade. I'm gonna copy exactly what I did on the other side. This panel looks good. Maybe the plaster makes the most sense here. Now fitting this into the rest of the buildings is gonna be a little tricky, but not too hard. I'm glad I made something like this that I can just quickly paste around, like so, completing the facade. And you see how I'm piecing together this building. I'm not wanting to do too much detail because it is a backstage area after all. Just a little bit to show that we might care about what it looks like back here. Yeah, I usually don't build like this. I know it's more like enjoyable or satisfying to watch videos like this, but how I build is not very satisfying, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I usually have a movie or a YouTube video or music in the background while I build, and it helps me just kind of zone out. But this requires me to be 100% engaged with what I'm doing, which is it's not the worst thing. But considering this game is my creative outlet, I like chilling while I play. Again, I'm not going to put much care or thought into the interior of this. You see the exterior, it has too many pieces, so don't expect some like life-changing scenery or anything over here. And I think this ride gets pretty popular, so we're gonna make the queue a little longer, and this should go straight into the path like that. Or maybe, let's see, maybe we can just take a piece of path. We'll stamp this path in like so. That way the path kind of leads in and you don't see the queue from the exterior. Yeah, matter of fact, I'll move this in a little bit more just so people aren't walking through the pillar, because the AI will do that. And now we just link this up like this. Whoa, paths cannot cross. Dog, as much as I praise this game, it still has Planet Coaster 1 tendencies. I'm gonna be honest, okay? Planet Coaster 1 tendencies. Okay, can I fix it with nodes? I can. Wunderbar. What is... Let's do the interior here. Copy the colorway. Okay, here we'll need something thicker. At least on the bottom. So we'll put that up. We need something like this. That's bull nose. Last thing we need to do is cover this all up. But yeah, this looks like a very convincing interior until you get in here and it's just that. Interior 1 done. We'll do the same thing for here. We're gonna want a wall to block this. Let's grab one of my favorite pieces from the new set, which is the Keep Stone Wall trim, and it looks better already. Probably needs something like a decoration on the wall. And for an interior light like this, you can set it to loop so that it's always on even during the day. This piece looks pretty good here, so we'll use it for the exterior as well. It's that piece. So yeah, we'll just copy this over. That looks like you could easily trip on it. The interior, you see that took me like 5 minutes, and you don't look at it twice when you're walking past. That looks like it belongs. Now I guess I need a sign that tells people they can't go this way. How do we make these 3 words fit? Does that get the point across? And since in today's day and age, people don't really look upwards, we can have a sign too. Hit them with the dotted line. Right exit only. Entrance that away. Nice. The theater is slowly getting incorporated. So now we just gotta cover everything. This is the fun part. And now we've got a solid section of facade. The more that I'm looking at it, this part is so tall that it doesn't really make sense for this to retain the yellow. I think that fits a lot better. We'll name it that as an ode to the castle that it was modeled after. This is all supposed to be like one building, right? You enter the castle and you go to the theater. Immersion wise, you're supposed to be entering, this all should be the theater in here. But of course, you know, everything in here is a facade. Everything is a lie. This is an amusement park hack on how they manipulate scale. So the guest now thinks, wow, this castle's so big, it has a whole theater in it. But behind the scenes, of course, we know that I'm lying through my teeth. It's gonna Z-fight a little bit. But you're not a Planet Coaster player if you can't handle a little Z-fighting. I think what we can do is just remove all these bricks. Or we'll just color them. Why not? It's a whole lot easier. One of the issues I was thinking of is the view from the resort. And I was originally worried about that. Like from here, it's just a big cube, right? But I think we can get some trees covering it, and we'll do some things that Phantasialand does with the fake nature walls. Universal does it too, specifically on Hagrid's. One of the back walls it looks like you're out in the Forbidden Forest, but in actuality, it's just a painted wall that looks pretty realistic as you're whooshing by at 40 to 50 miles per hour, right? We can get a texture or trees covering that, so it shouldn't look too jarring. I guess the biggest thing now is just to get the facilities on here. What does this do for the building? It makes it look cool. To me, that's believable as a backstage facade. But from the path, you can't really see it. Good. Okay, so that's pretty much done. I think I want to do the end building right here. I knew from a while back that I wanted to do a building that closely resembled this French building, La Maison Camerzelle, or in English, Camerzelle House. We're gonna start off with an arch shape. This is perfect, but it has the rest of that attached to it. If I color that black, the fire does get removed, in which case we can put this inside here. They're gonna make me create my own window here. Honestly, if you use this piece in your build, it's guaranteed to look good. I do like the look of sinking that in, and then you get the window texture. Okay, moving on. One thing I'm gonna make sure to do though is doing the same thing I did here, with having the buildings stick out. I generally switch between the plaster textures, so this building has the Planet Coaster 2 plaster, which is this white one, and this one has the Planet Coaster 1 plaster, which you can see the hard detail lines. It's the lime plaster wall, this one. And when buildings are next to each other, I switch it. So Planet Coaster 2, PC1, and this will be PC2 texture, just so they don't look the exact same. And this means I'm also going to keep the same proportions as the first building. That means the first two will be the full 4 meters, and then the third one will be 3 meters, and then this is 4, 3, 2. Let's figure out what we're gonna do detail wise. And if you're wondering, yes, I am trying to recreate it one for one. The wall itself needs like colored texture. It's such a unique building. Now, of course, that is a bit repetitive, so we need to break it up. You might just have to trust the process on this one. Maybe this window texture might do us a bit better. Like in my head, there's a combination of pieces that make this work, and I'm just trying to find that right now. In cases like this, the trim search is your best friend. You know, even though the wood isn't even detailed yet, that's kind of the look I was going for. And I can just throw this on here for the extra detail. And then to alleviate that look, we'll just take our handy dandy wooden brackets. So this one is probably the most triangular, and we can just sink it in like that. Ho ho ho. That's it. That's the look. So now you can see why I would put it next to a building like this. Oh, camera, why would you do that? Now, can you imagine if that happened to me during a time lapse? You'd be nauseated. I can move it off to the side, like so, while I make it shorter. So now we see, okay, we need to get it down to here. We can simply just lower it down. This is just so we can line up those pieces like that with the next level. I know this has a double, so we can delete one of them. And now we can just select all, move it over like so, and we can just lower this to match the existing one like so. Delete the double, and that is our wall. Pretty repetitive, but it is so detailed that it doesn't even matter. And how many pieces is this now? Oh my goodness, this building is gonna bankrupt my PC. This building is gonna devastate me financially. That's how we're looking after the first hour. You know when you think you've chosen the arrow, but you actually choose the plane translation, and it just messes up your whole flow? It's kind of funny, the gradient I made it serves no purpose, because there's not a single wall in this wall. Okay, so realistically, the roof should be like pretty tall, maybe like this tall. I may have to do something here, and that is use the in-game roof. And that might not look as good, but it's something I think I have to do. Yeah, that's good. That is how we're going to be able to do our custom hipped roof. The roof does kind of taper out a little bit. So something like this, even though the edge isn't supposed to be jagged, I think that's gonna be our best bet here. A good place to start is always this small bracket right here. Now this is not just like like a diagonal, it's kind of rounded a bit. And I realize this is actually pretty small. Is there a way I can shrink that? Okay, so for scale reasons, I'm going to have to redo this. Okay, we are getting somewhere. It looks a bit weird, but so do I. You see what too much Planet Coaster does to a man? Why did I choose the worst roof shape in the history of ever? It's not quite the same. We'll just say that's part of the design. You know, no one has to know. No one has to know that this raised my blood pressure. What if I just used this? I may keep that. Yeah, we'll keep it. This part should be pretty simple. We're just gonna throw a few windows on it. Bay windows, not bad. All of these pieces could have just been replaced with one of these. Oh, sorcery pack. We are almost there, guys. And since this is going to be viewed from pretty far away, you see how much they stick out of the wall. So it adds that bit of shadow. It's a lot more intriguing that way. Now, the roof does look very bare. So let's add some dormers. I think a gable like in this style would probably look good here, but this is also fine. That's quite alright to me. Now one of these needs to be a door. For this building I want to pretend that there's an interior again, but this time we're gonna do toilets. This isn't on the real building. I'm freestyling right now. So for this section, we're going to make the sign for the name of the building, and if you saw from the chapter title, it is called Gezeiten Rasthaus, which I believe it means tidal rest house, but I've been wrong before, so if that is not grammatically correct in German, then please let me know and I can fix it. But I wanted it to be called tidal rest house because I needed a water-themed building on this main street. Additionally, it's tidal because it's in the very front, and you'll like pass by it twice, you know, once when you enter the park in the morning and once when you leave in the evening, hence the title. And then now I am just making some decorations, a custom flag to hang on the building and really make it feel alive, because although the building looked great before, it was missing those extra details to make it feel lived in, and that's what all the other buildings on the main street had. So that's our final thing we're adding here before we're finishing and moving on. Now, we're finally going to work on your mom's house. Moving on, for this next section, we are going to be turning this shell of a building into a charming, cozy, timber-framed house. This was inspired by several reference images. I just looked up Fachwerkhaus architecture and looked around, found one that I liked, and took a lot of notes from it. I've been getting requests to show how I do this. This is me appeasing to that. But the building is pretty simple. Like, I know it looks complicated, I'm building all of these parts by hand, but it's all because I have this formula and technique down, and it's the same thing I use for every building. And once I kind of get that locked in, you know, it's pretty smooth sailing from there on. So you've seen it firsthand now. First I started off with a shell of a building, and then I move on to detailing the larger parts, you know, the walls, the flat faces that you see, sometimes turning them into non-flat faces, probably most of the time doing that actually, and then implementing key features that I want each building to have. And I think there's something to be said about having a unique or iconic feature for each building. Now, that's doing a lot, but that's exactly what this park is. It's doing a lot. So I don't recommend building like this unless you feel like it. That's just the way I do it. Unless it makes sense contextually to build uniform and identical buildings, then go for it. Like, let's say you're making a city and your goal is to portray the scale of the build, then I definitely would not make every single building unique. That's just insane. If you remember the suspended huts back in our American Frontier section of the park, those were copy and pasted because I only really cared about the shape and the scale of those buildings. But if they were up close to the path, then yeah, each one would probably be unique and tell the story about the person who lived there, something like that. And similarly, for our main street, you know, people are going to be entering these buildings, walking between them, and viewing them from almost 360 degrees around. So that's why I made the choice to do that here. Anyways, so the defining characteristic for this building, along with the intricate timber frame details, would have to be the upper section. So you see under the roof eave that sticks out. I'm using this batten wall texture. In the game, it's called the wooden beam wall, but it's using this solid dark wood texture for the upper half of the building, the part that is mostly covered by the roof overhang, and none of the other buildings on this main street have this. So in my eyes, that is the defining feature of this building. You can see it's starting to come together a little bit, despite me going very piece conscious on this part, because realistically, how often are you going to see this area of the building, right? Now we can just take this piece and copy it over. Yeah, that looks good. Holy. We need to figure out this area. Here I'm just going to continue what I started with the whole patio thing. So that means this area will not be accessible. As cool as it looks, it's probably too dangerous. Against my best wishes, it turns out we will be doing an interior for this building, but it'll be a simple one, okay? This interior will be smaller than the actual footprint of the building because of these parts of the wall that jut in. I'm gonna end up doing a similar thing to the other buildings, which is just basic walls followed up by this as the trim. That's okay. I mean, that's like the bare minimum for an interior, I think. Again, I'm not here to make the best interior of all time. If you want to see that, check out the last video. I want curtains here, but I don't necessarily want to block the view, you know? Alright, that's good enough for me. Boom. 1,300 pieces. Not even as much as this. See? A full interior is less pieces than this. A planter like that allows us to throw in, let's say, a pine tree. That might be our tree. To stop guests from actually using this path, I'm going to use the staff path. That way no one except staff will go back here. Unless they come from this side, they can of course go down that way. But the way the guest pathfinding works is they'll find the shortest path most of the time. So if someone comes into the park and they want to go down to Tawiskara, they'll just walk straight through here, which I don't want them doing. I want them to go around. I want to keep this. Maybe we like put it on this wooden part and then we change the color. You can't really see it unless you're up close. If you know, you know. Okay, when the lighting is like that, you can clearly see it. So dumb. We can just throw the dry grass around the edge and the strata rock around the edge of the cliff. Then we can just take our trusty handy dandy common reed and fill in this area. You know, this cliff kind of reminds me of something. I'm gonna put this cactus here as an Easter egg. This reminds me of when I just graduated high school and I went to Zion National Park. You know, a lot of these national parks, there's no guardrails and you can get really close to the cliff. In one of these such areas, let me illustrate it for you guys. I was too close to the edge. I walked and then I just slipped. And I was like, ah. And the only thing that caught me was a cactus. So I'm just sitting here hanging in the ultimate wedgie by a cactus. The rest of the trip, I was super careful. I didn't even go near any cliff face or any ledge, but I was just caught by a cactus and like looking down like 100 meters or so. So if you're ever out hiking and whatnot, be careful. After like the initial shock of what happened wore off, I was walking and I thought to myself, my back is really itchy. So I took my backpack off and my shirt and my back was just full of cactus pricks, just stuck to me and I didn't even realize. Yeah, W cactus and be careful. Alright, the next section, chapter 3, involves the complete renovation of this balcony. If you recall a couple episodes ago, when I made this balcony, I knew for a fact that it wasn't going to stay like this forever, or how it was forever. I just made a balcony using the same pieces that the building had, and I don't know, I guess I was at a creative like low. You know, you have highs and lows in your creative output, and I guess when I made that balcony, I was at an all-time low because, man, that balcony was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie, not one of my best works. But what came from it, this balcony here, is something special, I think. So it's a pretty unique style, I'd say. It's blending the timber framing and it has Gothic notes with a lot of intricate details and stuff. It just looks so much better than how it looked before. And showing you how I did this, it was a similar process to the first building of just using those Viking wood pieces and layering them onto each other and texturing them, and then implementing these shapes. I tried to implement that arch piece a lot from the sorcery pack. I thought it looked pretty good for this Gothic application. Functionally, I'm still using the same table and chairs that are purely scenery, so the guests can't really sit out here on the balcony, but they look so good I don't really care that much. Something I'd like to point out is that at the end of the time lapse it does look a bit strange, and so off camera I did end up changing it a little bit, which I'll go over in the live section. Essentially, I added a gable and some more Gothic adornments to the roof structure, and that tied everything together nicely. Even though this is a shorter chapter of the video, I guess the takeaway from this is how sometimes you can have a great looking building idea, but when you go to implement it, you'll find that it needs to be, I guess, contextually blended into your park. And that's even more so apparent with the workshop, because you can just download and plop things in, right? So obviously this balcony isn't from the workshop, but the same thing holds. It was actually inspired by some fantastical elven balconies, but it didn't fit into the park until I added elements from the large building behind it, essentially making the two disjointed ideas become one. So all of this is to say, if something doesn't look quite right, and that's not intentional, keep blending. This next area is the staff parking lot, and this is another area that I planned from the very beginning. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. So here we are, slowly moving closer and closer towards the entrance area. Right now I'm making a fountain in this area between the Camerzell house that we just made and the main street. The fountain is sort of to block the vision of this path here, because it is the staff path that will lead down into the parking lot. And if I just left it wide open, it's kind of like an eyesore, right? So I put this fountain here. Alternatively, I could have put in a tree, like a planter and then a tall tree, and that could have been a good vision blocker as well. But I went for the fountain because I thought of putting the clamshell on there to symbolize the ocean theme for that building anyway. And you may have also noticed the large quantity of Main Street detail around the two buildings that we made earlier, and I'll show those more in depth in the live section. I kind of did those without recording. I was just in the park messing around and I ended up building so much, so sorry about that. But yeah, now we're building this path. Well, it's a path, but it's supposed to be, you know, parking asphalt or parking concrete anyway, off of the main service road into what is now Staff Lot 2. And it's built in a similar style to Staff Lot 1, except there are no portable office buildings. There wasn't enough space for it. I guess I could have pushed the mountain back a little bit more and made some space for it, but that just didn't seem necessary. The other side had all the offices. This side could just be parking for staff members who needed to work in this section of the park at this time. Now we're at updating the traffic pieces and the road signs, road markings, and trying to make everything feel official. I just got mean flashbacks of working on the main parking lot in episode 3, even though it was so long ago, like a year ago to this day even. It was not fun. Man, it was not fun placing all the white plaster pieces to act as road markings. That was not fun. Luckily we only had to do it for a little bit here, and now I'm patching up the area between the shell we just made and this path, this newer staff path. The biggest issue I had with this path is going to 100% be the accessibility. Currently, there is none, but that is okay with the design we're going to have because this area will open up into the main path. So there's tons of ways to get around, like there's tons of accessibility paths around the park. This entrance just won't happen to be one, but accessibility was not the primary focus of this area. This area was just supposed to mostly block the backstage from the main street, actually, in a utilitarian way. So it's not just, you know, block it off with a fence and some trees and rocks and call it a day. This is actually useful for the park and infrastructure. So yeah, I've been trying to summarize the key takeaway from each edition in this episode, and I think for this area, context is everything. I've already set up the first staff lot as an accessibility hub for both staff and guests, and since that already exists, this staff area didn't need to include ramps or lifts. And yes, it would be nice, but realistically, it's not too unusual for parks to have to make decisions like this. Maybe there are space or budget constraints that force their hand. Specifically in this park, as you know, this is a space issue. This is not a budget issue. To combat this, Staff Lot 1 was over-engineered to be able to provide accessibility services to the other areas of the park that would normally be accessed by Staff Lot number 2. I do agree that other areas will need additional accessibility hubs, so that is something we will have to consider in the future. Alright guys, well this next part of the video is going to be something different. We're going to be working in the resort area again for the first time, and I think it's a year now. I have not edited anything over here in a year. Oh, besides when they added the glass, but today we're going to be making the resort entrance, which means yes, a lot of this area is going to be finalized now. That is pretty much what I wanted to achieve. Let's turn this into a stair. Like that. Like, why are there so many nodes? Sometimes you just gotta get rid of all the extra nodes. Looks a little better. It's still jank. Okay, that's the basic shape I wanted. Now the gate we're building here was inspired by Alcalá Gate, or Puerta de Alcalá, in Madrid, Spain. I know I could have done the European thing of putting the gate inside the roundabout here, but I'm gonna keep my abstract art structure there, and the gate will actually be a gate to the park. I originally had the idea of making this resort entrance way back when I made the resort, because I watched a Coaster Studios vlog of their trip to, I think it was Leesburg. Yeah, Leesburg, and they stayed at the Grand Curiosa Hotel, something like that. And that was an on-site resort hotel that had its own special entrance to the park, and I thought that was such a cool idea. That was back before Epic Universe opened, obviously, but you know, it's the same premise for those who stayed at Grand Helios Hotel. Same idea. You have a park entrance separate for the resort that is pretty unique and allows you to get the full experience. So that's what I wanted to create here anyway for the resort guests. So that's what that long winding path is right in front of the resort, or between the resort and the waterfront. And the path leads to this smaller plaza right in front of the roundabout. Guest flow wise, let's say you're staying at the resort, you just walk down to that main path and then walk up the path up to the special resort entrance. And that way you can avoid the crowds from the main gate and also head directly into this area of the park, which that might be the goal. You know, you go to a park, and I assume if you're watching this channel, you're somewhat of an enthusiast, so that, you know, when you go to theme parks, you kind of have an idea or a plan of what rides you want to hit in what order to optimize your time there, unless you're buying Express Lane or something. But I think you still need to optimize Express Lane in these days because so many people are buying them. Anyways, I also had to revamp the guest flow for the pedestrian area too. There's a bus stop that gets off right before the roundabout, and in that little platform bus stop island, I had to rearrange the bollards and the barriers to allow for pedestrians to walk across, you know, and cross in front of the parking garage, which you saw earlier in the time lapse, and make their way to this area in front of the gate. And then obviously I had to throw in a lot of bollards because you don't want people driving into the park gate. So moving on, as you can see, a bit of a different architectural style. This is more leaning into neoclassical, which I love. The pieces in the game lend themselves to being used for neoclassical architecture very, very well, so it's no surprise that this building looks the way it does. Again, this is also heavily using the sorcery pieces, and what can I say? It's the most versatile pack. Maybe aquatic and sorcery are like the two most versatile. Oh, also Viking, actually. Earlier in this video, actually, I got so much use out of the Viking pieces, so those are among the most versatile. But the neoclassical gate was chosen here to bridge the gap between the modernity of the resort with the heavy industry of the new area that hasn't been built yet. This style of building is just timeless, and it looks good next to anything in most contexts. That's another tip I have. Intermediary architecture can alert guests of an upcoming transition, building up to it while also making it feel less jarring. And this is particularly useful when your theme lands flow into each other rather than using Epic Universe style gates. Moving on, off screen I did the landscaping for this area, and the focus of that was to create a sound wall of foliage, because in the very near future there will be a roller coaster on the other side of this gate. So my job here was to make things look neatly kept, to preserve the neoclassical landscaping style while functionally providing a vision and noise blocker for the coaster. With the resort being so close, this was especially a concern because it emphasizes serenity and reconnecting with nature. And what could be more opposed to that than the screams of guests strapped to an industrial themed hunk of metal? This will be a similar setup to our hypercoaster on the other side of the park, specifically how the parking lot section is blocked off by a bunch of tall vision blocking trees. I wanted the park to leave a minimal impact on the landscape, apart from what is absolutely necessary. And this goes along with the setting of the park. You know, geographically we are set in the southeasternmost tip of Bavaria, which is a stunningly beautiful region home to a real national park. And in my headcanon, I'd like to imagine that the Bavarian municipality only allowed this park to exist here under the clause of preserving the natural beauty of the land while introducing modern thrills and experiences to newer generations. This is why the resort is eco-luxury themed, and this is also why the park has so many terrain changes and such interesting geography. I tried to conform to what would be geographically interesting features of the land, instead of terraforming everything and making it a flat plot. Aside from the parking lot, I wanted the park to blend into the landscape. So for another bit of the depth at which I plan out my parks, sometimes creating a purpose or overarching story will guide you while helping keep things consistent. Having guiding principles just makes most things fit together even when they shouldn't. For the final chapter of this video, we will be incorporating the front of the castle into the rest of the Astral Junction area. First I stamped all the paths down, and then started building a stone railing and retaining wall system around the path to create the patio shape. And recreating the beauty of the gardens in front of the real Pellish Castle was the primary objective of this patio. And to do that, I made the defining feature of those gardens being the iconic stone basket and fruit sculptures, which I captured here by using the marketplace apple pieces and coloring them to resemble chiseled limestone. Next, we needed to address the big theater shell that we spent the beginning of the video creating. Our goal was to cover wherever it was visible from inside the park. Luckily, when I built the castle, I made it modularly, so in the background, if you ever see floating walls and stuff, that's what this is. It allowed me to just plop prefabricated pieces of my build over the theater. I then made sure to cover up the new edges of the facade by using black plaster walls and air conditioning vents, all while constantly viewing it from the different Main Street angles, ensuring that nothing can be seen that shouldn't. And since we covered up the remaining side of the castle, I went through and deleted all of the extra pieces that will no longer be seen for that extra little bit of peace consciousness. Every little bit helps when you're building a park at this scale. Then I worked on the landscaping, and if you couldn't tell, I really like using the Viking wall placed at an angle as a recessed or sunken in retaining wall. It's the technique I use to make the Main Street gardens look so well kept, and this area is just a continuation of that look. The formula is to place the walls at around 45 degrees from the ground, and then terraform to barely expose the stones. You're left with a structurally sound slope that's clean, simple, and realistic. Next, this small structure is an attempt at making one of those upright neoclassical fountains that you often see in French and Italian cities. Again, this is me adding things from the landscaping of the real castle, which in of itself is a masterclass of design principles that I could go on about for days. Long story short, carved limestone terraces, height changes, and vibrant green contrast makes things look pretty. I want this park to be so pretty that people would visit the park just for the fantastical architecture and scenic compositions, similar to how architecture fans will tour buildings for the love of the game. You know, and then the world-class attractions and rides here are just a bonus. Foliage-wise, this is a well-kept garden, and I'd like to imagine that there's a gardening crew specifically dedicated to the upkeep of this area. The castle is one of the main icons of the park, so it makes sense to invest a little more into its upkeep. Moving on, every piece in the garden was meticulously placed because there were so many different sightlines I had to account for. Whenever you're adding significant foliage, definitely make sure you aren't blocking your own statement builds where you don't want to. This is why I used a lot of hedge and wild grass pieces. Those pieces aren't big enough to cause a significant obstruction, so I could be more carefree with the placements. To tie this build into the next themed land, I wanted this castle looming over it in a similar way to how Heidelberg Castle sits above Heidelberg, Germany. That's a small hint at the next themed land, which is not an IP, nor does it exist in real life, but it is my own creation that draws a lot from real life, specifically the cities of Heidelberg and Essen. And be sure to stick around until the very end where I'll reveal the name and the portal of the next themed land. During the month that I've been away, I've been working on the next 2 episodes simultaneously, so hopefully that will all be apparent by the year's end. A lot of that work included writing the narrative of the park, script writing, logo creation, names, planning, layouts. There's just so much behind the scenes for this area that I know you guys are going to love. Honestly, I'm so excited to be finished with this video so I can begin recording the next 2, because the new area will most certainly be better than anything I've made thus far. Seriously, you don't want to miss that, so I highly recommend you turn on post notifications. Now that this has all been explained, there's a lot of work I did off screen, so we're going to the live section to close this video out. Here's a few additions that didn't really fit into the tour. I built a chain lift mechanism for the top of the Hyper, inspired by the one on Hyperia. The code for this will be in the description. I received my first ever super thanks, so to commemorate that, I made this bench. Thanks, Gally. I updated the staff zones to include the Astral Junction now, and assigned staff will now have their clothing colors reflecting what zone they work in. And now for the tour. Starting off the live tour, I thought I'd start at the resort entrance. This is the long, windy path that we can take up to the brand new gate. Here's what it looks like at the moment. I've added some details, but there's still a bit I need to add. Here's some directional signs. These are from the workshop, which I will link below. And similarly, all of the security assets are from the workshop as well. They really sell this gate as an alternate entrance to the park. I don't think that sign spoils anything, right? But this is the guest services booth right outside the gate. Just in case any resort guests, or park guests in general, get lost, they can come here for assistance. Moving through the gate, these are really good assets. I will link them below. Here's what the other side of the gate looks like. And here is the wall of trees I talked about. Still needs more work done, but see, there's a clearing there for a specific ride. Wink wink. Now we're back on the main street, and well, this is what it looks like now with the 2 end cap buildings complete. Sometimes I forget how good the dynamic weather makes things look in this game, but this, oh my gosh, man. This is so pretty. And here are the exterior details that I added to the build to make it feel alive and fit in the park. This building here that we built on camera is going to be what I put on the workshop today, so if you guys want to check it out, I'll include all of these decorations and stuff in that blueprint. This side just has a bench, staff path, and this is the way back around. Inside the building, it's pretty small. There's just 2 information kiosks and some souvenirs, and the window. This is a great view. As for the other side of the path, Did the same thing with the patio furniture just out front. I didn't add the barriers so people can just walk through it as of right now. This one says guest facilities. That is because the Gezeiten Rasthaus is home to drinking fountains and toilets. That's all we have in here at the moment. Very tall buildings, but I think they fit. Let's turn the rain off now. It's so nice how the residual rain kind of pools on the ground for a little bit after it stops raining. If we head through the Starlight Manor gift shop into Madame Melon's, we can just walk through this wall to emerge on the completed balcony. And this area, again, one of my favorites. I love all the areas that you can sit that are outdoors at this park. This is the design of the roof that I ended up going with. So you can see I added the gable and some more iron details, and yeah, it really just brought everything together. It blends in with the building that it's connected to. It also blends in with the Gothic area right in front of it. And then these elements here tie it in with this, so it all just looks pretty cohesive. If we head further into the park, you'll notice that the Pelesh Castle now looks a bit more vibrant. I added those hanging banner things, the semicircle banners, and I added a bunch of plants. Whether it's the box plant or the sculpted hedges. Adding those little bits of greenery and extra detail definitely make this build feel a lot more alive than it was. Now up front on the castle, you see I've given it the name, Pelesh Theater. This is the entrance to the queue, you know, the typical ride safety. If you remember from earlier, this looks like it has a really intricately themed queue, right? But we just did this part that you can see in the front. And then the rest of the queue is just in the darkness down here. And as you can see, it is functional. Guests get out here, a bit of a traffic jam, that's alright. And they exit back on the main street. Additionally, I've added some movie posters similar to how in front of any cinema will have, you know, the new movies that they're screening on the windows outside. That's what these are supposed to be. Being the Astral Junction, I chose a few popular space movies, some of my favorites. So we have the original Star Wars, the old Dune, Interstellar, which is kind of new compared to the other two, but still classic, and 2001 A Space Odyssey. The finished patio is definitely an area that I would hang out in real life. There's a lot of open space in the middle. Maybe a performer or something would be here, and picnic tables all on the outside. These glass tables are really nice from the workshop, and to make them functional, I took the in-game picnic benches and just put them underneath. It looks kind of jank, but people can sit here. And then this is the area of the backstage wall that we covered up. You can see the sprinklers going off. Love this area so much. But this is going to be the entrance portal to the next themed area. So at the end, I'll show you the logo and you know and the name of it, what I've come up with, and that should be pretty exciting. This area of the path has a small stone path back to the generator behind the sign in case any maintenance needs to be done. And this entrance also brings you around the front. Here we are. It says the Astral Junction on this one, and it really frames the area nicely. The gold hints, the logo, this all fits together really well. Moving down the garden, we approach our fountain piece, which has the same statues as up there. Now if we go this way, we will enter a staff-only zone, which is one of the larger gates. There's a staff path here, so guests won't be able to go back here. Here is a staff gate that I found on the workshop. This can open up and allow vehicles like this one to go into the park to perform any maintenance. And now the big wall in the back, you see I've used a 32-meter billboard to cover up the facade, and I'm really enjoying this. An image like this is called a flat forest, realistic flat forest. Man, does it look good, right? Blends in pretty well. I've done the landscaping around here, some more details in the lot, extra pieces, I've also updated the park infrastructure, so now we have labels of the facilities. M1 facility refers to this big building, which means M2 through M7 will be through this tunnel straight ahead. And you know that goes around to the other side of the park. And this path brings you back up. Behind the scenes, this is a staff building. And we head back into where we started. But aside from that, guys, that's gonna do it for me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know we didn't accomplish one large thing, we did a bunch of smaller things, so it was a bit less exciting, but overall these are things that needed to be done, and they set the groundwork for the really exciting things that are yet to come. So, a necessary episode, a long episode, but it's finally done, and we can get back to expanding to new areas. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed, drop a comment, but without any further ado, let's reveal the next area.